All right, so as you can see from the title of the video, this one is addressing what to do if you're like 90% of people, kind of in the middle class. And especially if you're highly ambitious, like how do you go about that and use that for fuel? So this is just raw talk video, no editing. I just want to be real, no script, talk to the camera, because this is really my life and I think it's like 90% of us, right? The reason I'm making this video is because I'm sure we all grew up watching those movies in Hollywood or Bollywood or wherever you watch those movies and you hear those stories, or even like you hear those songs, like those hip hop songs of the rappers and all of that. And the protagonist in all these movies or all these songs is always someone who has gone through hell, who's had a shit childhood, like absolutely terrible childhood, just gone through the worst shit. And then from all those failures and adversities, they come out on top and they become this highly successful, ambitious, like driven person, right? And the reason that a lot of the movies are like this is because it's emotionally cool for us to see. Like, what's the point of a movie? In a movie, you want to see something that is not like real life. You want to see someone go through some crazy shit and like come out on top. Like most people, like 99.9% of us in real life are not doing that. And some news for you, by the way, which they don't show in the movies, is most people who go through abusive childhoods, who grow up with trauma, who have horrible things happen to them, unfortunately, they don't become successful because they're fucked up. They have psychological issues. They're not going to show you that in the movies because it's not cool to see. They want to show you that 0.1% who like break free and become a millionaire or billionaire after like their parents were killed, right? Or their dad was abusive and beat them with a belt. You know what I mean? That's really like what the movies show you, but that's unfortunately not the reality. So again, movies show things like that because it's cool. And how do you find motivation and ambition when you just have a normal life? That's what I really want to address. Let's say you're middle class and you grew up not with an amazing life, like you didn't have yachts and private jets and you didn't fly business class everywhere and you didn't stay in 5-star hotels and not everything was paid for, but you didn't have a shit life. Like you didn't have a terrible life. You didn't have an abusive father. Your parents were very loving. You had a meal 3 times a day. You basically got the basic necessities done. You had a roof over your head. You went to high school, middle school, all that kind of stuff. That is most of the people who are watching this video. If you have YouTube and you're watching, that's like 90% of us, right? So for that normal person who grew up middle class like me, how do you find that insane drive, that ambition to like go above and beyond? Because for most of us, we didn't grow up with our dad being shot or our dad abusing us or our parents being terrible or dying. Like we were not Bruce Wayne, like in The Dark Knight when he saw his parents get shot in front of him and then he had to go on that arc and become Batman, right? Batman does not represent 99% of us because we didn't see crazy shit growing up, right? But we can still have ambition and fuel like Batman. So how do you do that? I think there's 2 ways that you can approach this. Number 1, if you grew up with a pretty normal life, you didn't have like abusive parents, like you're very just middle class, like your life is normal, how do you create fuel? I think the first way you can do this is by creating a false sense of urgency. How do you create a false sense of urgency? Now, this is going to sound very psychopathic to like most of you, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but I do this, and sometimes you just need to do this for it to work because you have a normal life and you didn't grow up with crazy situations like your parents getting shot or some crazy shit that gave you this arc. So how do you create this? I sometimes think in my head that like in the next 2 years, my parents are going to die, or like my mom has cancer, or some crazy shit like my house is going to get blown up. Like I convince myself of these things in my head to give myself urgency. Like, should I only have 2 years left with my parents? I need to fucking go. I need to make money so that I can go like live with them, be back home and help them. Or I come up with crazy scenarios in my head, like my family's in danger and I need to do something about it. Now, I'm a psychopath and that's why I can do this. Let's say you're not a psychopath. I mean, it does work, so try it out. Like create you didn't grow up with some crazy shit happening. You didn't grow up with like an insane thing like they talk about in like rap songs where someone came up and shot them up, right? So you need to create like something crazy, like a crazy scenario in your head, and like that works, right? If you can't do that or you think that's too psychopathic, here's a more streamlined solution, which I also use, right? Use small moments in your life as fuel. Like even if you grew up with a good, like having a good life and you had good parents, you can still think of like certain moments where like, damn, I don't want that again, or that was tough, to sort of like fuel yourself to work hard and remind yourself of those moments every day. Write them down or like really sit down and visualize them and think about them and be like, fuck. Let me give you guys a story actually. maybe you can use this as inspiration, right? And I'm sure a lot of you have faced similar situations. So I grew up decent life. I went to college. I'm from Pakistan originally, but I went to college in America. And like as you guys know, probably most of you, as an international student, it's a lot. The fees is a lot. Granted, I did get some scholarships, which helped out. It was still like my dad still had to pay a lot of my college tuition, right? And if it wasn't for me, he'd be healthier. He'd be living a more free life. He'd be doing whatever the fuck he wanted to. But because of me, he had to grind, work 12 hours a day, not for his business, for somebody else, just so that he could get enough money to get me through college, right? And I'll tell you this story because my dad, he had a job. He worked in telecommunications infrastructure, and he basically moved every 2 or 3 years of his life to a new country. And he didn't want to do this. He just did this so he could pay the bills and he could support his kids in college and pay their tuition. So one of the countries he moved to randomly was Nigeria. He fucking hated it there, by the way. The only reason he moved there was because they paid him well, and so he could use that money to support our family. He could pay for me so that my dumbass could get a fucking education, and like he could pay for my food so I could go party and shit, right? That's why. So one day, over, I think this was like spring break in college, like my junior year, I decided to go visit my dad in Nigeria just to see like how he's doing, and my mom. And this is one of those moments which you can use as fuel, which I use. I will never fucking forget this. I showed up to the airport in Nigeria, right? I'm a fucking degenerate college kid, show up. I go outside and my dad's waiting there to pick me up, right? So he's like waiting in the car, he's pulled up here in Lagos in Nigeria. So I get into the vehicle. And as soon as I haven't seen my dad for like 8 months at this point. As soon as I sit down in the passenger seat with my dad, he's driving. I look over to him. He just says hi briefly, like he hasn't seen me in 8 months. But I look over to him and I will never forget the look on his face. I'll never forget what he looked like because he had red eyes, all right? He was trying to smile but couldn't really. He was like frowning a little bit and you could see the stress on his face. And I will never, ever forget that face. And I get emotional just talking about this because I think about that face my father had every day. The way his eyes were red, the way that he had stress on his face. And I look at him and I think, what the fuck am I doing with my life? This man has red eyes. He's working 12 hours a day for some dumbass Nigerian he doesn't want to fucking work for. Living in some shit country he doesn't want to live in. Not being back home in Pakistan. Not being healthy, smoking cigarettes out of stress, not going to the gym because he doesn't have time. Like he can't do fucking shit he wants to do. He's working 12 hours a day for someone else. And it's stressful as fuck. And the only reason is for me. So I can get an education, so I can go through things. So I think back to that sometimes when I'm wasting time and when I'm fucking around, I think about that face very distinctly that my father had. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? He really did all that and I'm going to sit here and go to the bar and drink and fucking watch 4 hours of Premier League and fucking watch Game of Thrones. No, man. Holy shit. Why the fuck would I do that? When my dad had red eyes, why the fuck would I do that? So anyways, that's just an example for me and it hits very emotionally for me, as you can tell, but you probably have your own examples. Think about times when your father, like you saw a face that you're like, what the fuck? And use that as like, shit, like this is why I need to get on that Batman arc, all right? Your parents didn't get shot in front of your eyes like Batman did, all right? But you can use other things as fuel. Because in reality, if your parents got shot in front of your face like Batman, you'd probably be a drug addict. The movies are not going to show you this. But because the movies look so cool with the protagonist like Batman, for you as a normal person who grew up with a decent life, you can still use certain things, like I just mentioned, as fuel or create fake scenarios in your head if you're middle class to use that to become Batman, all right? So go ahead and do it because most of us are middle class. Most of us grew up with decent lives, but we can still become fucking Batman if we just lock in, if we just use those things as fuel. A little bit of a longer video, a little bit more of like just me raw talking. So thanks for listening in. If this was helpful, if this motivated you a little bit, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Peace.